Okay, let's begin. Please stand up, all those who have a place next to you so people can sit there. Thank you. Okay, we have Manel today here, Manel Molina, who is a developing technician. He has 5 years of experience in cybersecurity, SCADA, and now he works for Allo Trust Engineering. Welcome. Thank you very much. A big applause for him. Thank you very much. Thanks for giving me the chance of being here, of sharing with you everything that I'm going to show you now. And even if I have been introduced already, I'm new around here, so I just made my first presentation, first slide as an introduction about what I do, my day-to-day basis. Apart from the laptop, we are also devoted to the OT sector. So sometimes we have to take the helmet and the laptop and the vest and walk around, which is nice too. And well, you can see more or less my day-to-day basis. I come from system administration part. I also have some knowledge about development. I also play with firewall endpoints, and mainly recently I'm focused on automation, on how to provide SOCs, a layer of automation and automated response against incidents and against many tasks that they perform every day. So this is the SOAR part. My role is this. Now I perform all these tasks, and I'm in charge of thinking about new designs and how to take advantage all the new about the new technologies provided by manufacturers and adapt them to industrial environments, which is what we see. And sometimes they have big needs that sometimes are not covered by default, and we need to adapt to those needs. That's more or less my role. What I'm going to tell here, I'm going to talk about VPNs. I'm going to talk about VPNs. We assume that all of you know what a VPN is. All of us may have worked with a VPN, normally with commercial brands, but here you have a definition from Wikipedia, in case someone who's not that has a technical profile knows more about this. But I also liked to just make a graphical description about a VPN. It's like a road in which you can walk safely and browse and surf internet safely. That's their purpose, is to protect us. That's more or less the function, the initial function that it was given. Here you can see which is encrypting communications, granting access to the internal resources of an organization. And in many cases, when an organization has some measures implemented to exit into the internet, being connected to this VPN means that we can take advantage of those benefits. Like that, we will be more protected. That would be the legitimate end of a VPN, and that's the original purpose of a VPN. But as in many other aspects, it depends on the use that we do. From that, we can do many things, and each of us can use our imaginations. So I just wondered, what do people do with VPNs? What do they use it for? I left many examples behind, but I think that I'm going to show some of the most relevant aspects. In the end, they use VPNs for playing, especially young people, how to create local networks in an easy way. And in the end, what they create is a VPN. That's what it's behind those programs. The uses are still legitimate, but people, as I said, end up using it for other purposes. For instance, like purchasing Spotify accounts on Philippines, which is much cheaper. I do what I shouldn't. I mean, introduce the payment data through a VPN that I used on the internet, that I found on the internet, and let's see who controls that. So that's one of the uses of VPNs. That's the same for Netflix. It depends on the fees of each service in each country. People decide to let's move virtually to Turkey to buy Netflix there. People try always to find good use of it. For flights, it's more the same. This is more and more trendy recently through YouTube. It came from the technical part because in the end everyone likes to fly and to travel around and go, even if he's devoted or he or she's devoted to ITs. And in the end they all end up learning, so they take advantage for this and by flights playing with this the exchange rate of current money there. So that's another end. Also, it's useful for big amounts to be transferred, that they can be done through VPNs. Also to sell opinions. When you see opinions around, just believe half of them because they are all purchased, they are all paid. VPNs as proxies are a fantastic choice to leave comments that seem to come from different people, and they are used by marketing agencies mainly to make some positioning from this website or this company. So we use VPNs and we just leave comments there. Works for Google, for Amazon products, TripAdvisor. There are many services. These are only a few of them, but in the end, many use VPNs for this purpose. And the most important thing now, in a week, we will work from home. That's for remote working too. We have seen this guy, we have his video, it's a parody from consulting specialists. It's very interesting to use VPNs for that purpose. Now we have seen all these uses of VPNs. It seems to be very versatile. We can exploit these somehow and use it for other purposes. And that's what I'm about to explain here. What I achieved to do with a VPN. I'm on the attacker side. So here we have some things that we're going to see in this presentation. This is how I did it, but it's important that each of us remind the concept of the concept. And obviously, every one of us can use it as the most convenient way. There are many steps that can be done differently, but this is the way I did it in an easy way. It's easy to understand also. And there we go. First of all, phishing. We're not going to create anything new. If something works, we can take advantage of it. It's the entry point for many attacks. Let's see how we can use it here and how we do it to send the file. We will see that later. Then, in this case, we're going to use a Reg file, and we're going to see another option. There are many options here, as you can see. The question is how we do it. Then we're going to create a safe channel to browse the internet and to control that computer and do some different things. That's where we are going to use the VPN that we are establishing. We're going to use the VPN services so we can conduct the encrypting system. And with regards to the safety equipment, all the monitoring tools that we have, it's seen as a VPN. So remote control, as we have seen, it's something that we will see along the presentation. I focused on how to take advantage of VPN. I didn't need actually to use any malware or nothing similar. We're going to control through some scripts. Then we're going to use this to conduct an exfiltration of information through an encrypted system. And like that, it's going to be more difficult to detect what we are doing, seeing from outside, of course. And in the end, taking advantage of this network that we will create in the next, that we will see how to create in the next slide, we'll see how we can switch from this this attack of controlling a computer to a man-in-the-middle attack. We're going to see the switch. In the end, it's the most relevant thing. We can see everything, but I think this is the most used nowadays and is the most useful for us. This is the diagram of what we're going to do. We have a VPN connection that we establish in this attacking server, and to which we're going to connect the victim's computer. In this VPN server, apart from the service VPN service, we're going to use Samba as a shared resource. We're going to play with this to develop the scenario that we're going to create. Also, as I said, with phishing, why do we need to create something new if we want to capture traffic? Wiser, it's already done, and it's made for that, so we can use it. We access the server through the RDP, and depending on what we are doing, we can just jump into it directly. We can chain some jumps depending on what we need. We also will use IP tables to control the traffic. And in the case of IP table, I'm going to I define some general rules. Depending on the type of attack that we are conducting, we can make it more refined if we want to, and make it more granular when regarding traffic. Lastly, regarding the man-in-the-middle attack, we're going to do it through the browser. The browser itself will send us the information that we need to see the traffic, and even if it's through the VPN, it's encrypted itself, so we will see how we can obtain it. As I said, we're going to create the file server. We're going to use as a command and control server. We are used to see command and control servers that work by HTTP or HTTPS. That's the most standard thing. So now we have created a VPN and we can access to those resources easily. We are going to use them. This is the simple configuration I did. We will see afterwards when do we use it. In the end, this is just looking on Google, and it's easy to find how to establish it. For phishing, you will see that the Reg file, which is what I used to unchain the attack, has a small interaction with the user. So the way I found to mask it, to cover it, is an email that I send through human resources. So I create a form in HTML. So the easiest way I found is through a script. I send the HTML and I send it to a server. In this case, I used a Gmail server, but we could use our proper server, which is less controlled, or in which what we send is less controlled. That depends on our needs. I just created a test, so you can see that the resource arrives perfectly. It's true that when I did the test, I created a new email address for this purpose to create these tests. And at first, what I received from the anti-spam system was that my email was classified as spam, but I was able to download the file. It depends on the system, but in the end, many companies use Google services. So this is quite relevant and significant to conduct this test. As I said, this is the form that I sent. In the end, the design is not very elaborate, but many people send just bad written emails, so they don't work too much on it. If someone wants to make it better, just have to work on the DTP part. In the end, I just wanted that the user had some exchange with form with these indicators that you can see, and so he or she considered that these changes must be saved. At the end of the message, what I say is that you go to the attached file to save what you just answered. So that's when we execute the file. That attached file, in the case of Google, was we could download it. There are other type of files that, if they are sent from a server which is not our own, once it arrives to Google, it is marked as an attached file, but the download button is disabled. For these kind of files that we are using here, we don't find that problem. X's are more control, PowerShift are more control too, Visual Basic, JavaScript. There are many type of files that are very used for hacking, and I try to innovate through this part. This has a good side and a bad side. This is getting into the subject. This is the Reg file that I sent him. This is generated. You create the registry entry with everything you want to create, and you can export it. When you export it, it's true that you don't export just a series of values. You export everything you have in that folder of the registry. So I had OneDrive at the moment, so the Reg file, it's a flat file. You just download and delete everything you don't want, and the file will just load what it's in the file. In this Reg file, what I did is to run some commands that I have explained there. You will see that there are things that are very compressed, because the difficulty I found here is that you just send a very complex file. It won't run it because there are some limitations regarding the number of characters you can use, and when you exceed the number of characters, it doesn't work. So we start from the very beginning. You hide the window, you run a command. In that command, you move to ppdata file folder, and that folder is where Windows stores configuration files for previous telephone access and VPN connections from the native client of Windows, which is the PDK file. So I move to this folder, PBK, excuse me. I run the minimal configuration I need for the VPN. Here, in order not to use the IP address and to make it shorter, I use domain numbers, free domains in this case. I noted down the IP address. Also, I needed the internal IP address of the server, which is meant more characters, so I did the same. I took advantage of the DNS resolution, the external DNS resolution, and also I introduced the internal one, so it will work in any case. So it's not useful anymore. Name, username, password, everything was very safe. So for the moment, this worked for us. We could modify that once we are already inside. So as I said, this is just the basis. Everyone can adapt it as he or she wants. And in the end, we copy the file and we paste it locally, and we execute it. c.bat. This is the file that will be in charge. With the reg file, we have the persistence, and with the c.bat, what we're going to do is making these command and control calls. This is a .reg file, but another option that we have is using directly the CMD without using PowerShell. It's a very compressed command because we have a limitation, as I said. Here, what I did is to create an access, a direct access, and in the end, if it goes through a sandbox, as I explained, there's nothing much to do. A sandbox, maybe we could see the behavior, but with an antivirus or a direct access which cannot be reached, it's not very useful in this case. The only difference here is that in the s.bat file, you can see that I have changed a little bit the IPs. This bat file will generate the persistence. We had it before with the reg file, but in this case, we would need to create it. Another thing that I found in this situation is that when creating the direct access, the shortcut, it works better, the shortcut better than an exe file. So if you want to download an exe file in the attack in the computer that you're trying to attack, it's going to block it because everyone knows what can it contain. The LNK file that I used won't be blocked, but in the end, yes, they were blocked. You are able to download it, but you are not able to execute it. The important thing, the VPN server, the order, you can do it as you wish. Those first steps, you create the VPN. You have the configuration that I used for that. It's a very easy VPN. Just to highlight that I used Google's DNS, and that would be another way for the attack. In this case, I use a range of 100 IPs. It depends on each case, but if we want to avoid overlapping, we can limit the use of VPN that's going to be used. The DHCP delivered by the server can be limited. So lastly, we just resend the traffic of the equipment to the VPN server, so that everything flows through us. So as I said, we can switch easily to a man-in-the-middle attack. Here we have the script that will generate that communication, that command and control that I mentioned. Here's the same. You can see it's a loop that it's executed every 20 seconds. We could do it randomly, that it was not every 20 seconds, but that it switches, so that detecting systems, it's more difficult to detect. What we do here is to copy one of the previous slides. You remember, just let's go back a minute. Here, what we did is that once we wrote the VPN configuration, we connect to it, and we mapped a folder from the server, a VPN folder, and also which is the file server. So here, taking advantage of that mapping of folder, what we did is to copy the file. We name it, just in case it's a long execution. When the loop starts again, there's no overlapping execution. So we will leave a first file with a name, cmd.bat. It would be renamed to cmd to run .bat, and until we don't put the name cmd.bat, it won't stop. It's mainly this, what we do here. This is how we are going to execute the bat file. Then we can make the file, the call to the file. There's no need to copy it as in PowerShell. In PowerShell, we will see that it's not possible for us to run this file. Here I'm going to talk quickly about this command and control system. We would have the cmd.bat file in server, which is the one who is conducting the loop one and over. We have the list of commands that we want to run. I do it in a basic way. I'm editing as I work, but you can create a program that will be downloading the commands there and having a visual to work in a more comfortable way. Then, to see the response that I receive from the computer that we are attacking, in the previous script you can see that the file is downloaded to a txt file, so we know that we have a tail from the server to see the response of what we are running. In the end, that's the way we have to see if there's any client connected to the VPN, so they will be able to read those commands that we are running. With a GRB, we can see that there's an IP that is connected, but we can see that it's going to keep running. So previous one is blocked already. To do all these, as I said, in the server we're going to use Wiser. To do this, I start with a VPS that was the most basic thing that we can find or that we can purchase. You don't have graphic environment, you have nothing. So if we need to use Wiser, you can have a graphic environment and the XRDP to access the machine through this graphic environment and be able to run this Waxer. We could use, you could do something else. We can send it to a third computer. This is for conveniency. I decided to do this. It's a very basic configuration that you can easily find through the internet, and it should work. Here, that's when we enter in the man in the middle attack. We will see all these afterwards, excuse me. We're going to see it directly. I will explain that later. For this man in the middle, as I do it, it's just a man in the middle. We're going to take advantage function which is given by Wireshark, which is reading the 3 master keys that are doing the SSL negotiations. So we're going to configure this from the preferences of Wireshark, and we are saying that those keys are given in the PM key log, which is a local root for us, for the client. This would be a remote root, which is from some server that we have been using during all the execution of this exercise. And finally, we choose the VPN tunnel that we are using, and we just filter by TLS. If we wanted to see HTTP, we wouldn't need this, and we just need to see HTTP, and we would see that. But here I focused on TLS, which is the most interesting thing nowadays. Everything that I explained before can be done in Linux and Windows, but if you want to do this on Windows, you will have a limitation, which is that Wireshark on Windows works through a PK file. So they need a Win pickup, and probably it will deliver some alerts when redirecting the VPN traffic, and you have to redirect it from the physical network, and Wireshark will sit through the encrypting of the VPN. So this is interesting to do it from Linux system.
Okay, so when we have all of this configured, we go back to the prior step, to the remote execution that we had before. And we have a illicit feature, which is this SSL environment variable, which the browsers Chrome and Firefox work with, so that if it has been defined, you can download there the key exchange when you open a connection. So because we have this code remote execution, we define this variable, and it's usually defined locally and through Wireshark, and you can do a troubleshooting, but this is not the case here. This environment variable we're going to define against our attacker server that we have mapped, so that the log file, we have it, and that's why in the prior step you've seen that we are aiming for a local route, so that's the equivalent. And this is the file that's arriving. You can see that it's really the keys or the path that are there that works. Wireshark will be able to use to clarify the traffic. So this is just the test, and there it is. This is TLS traffic. I've used a very simple form so as not to have to do any research and analysis of in Wireshark. And we can see here that this is a flat text file, a very common platform this month, isn't it? So we're going to try to do a demo right now of what we've seen so far, and if it works, great, and if not, I'll show you a video, because I think the Wi-Fi connection is not great. So you can see a test. Why use a virtual machine if you have the real machine? Wi-Fi doesn't seem to be working well enough, so we're gonna have to resort to plan B. I will show you the video then. Everything that I've described so far. So this is the equipment we're going to attack, we're going to take control over. And this is a Windows 10, and we're going to see what the status of the equipment. So we see we're using the user of Mr. Atento, who is not member of any administration group. He's just a standard user. Only with the remote feature, but this is irrelevant for this test. And we're gonna see what are the network cards. There's only the Ethernet, the physical network card. So now we go to the file where the VPN configuration is stored, the one that we've seen earlier on in the script when we were looking for the configuration. We see that it's empty, there's only one file, and in this case we have sort of an activated protection. I've tried this also with some more sophisticated antiviral products, and I've also been able to do it. Some of them might detect it, but this is trial and error, you know. But in this case, it's Windows 10, so it's quite up to date. Registry keys, there's none so far, only the OneDrive. So what I've done here, I've executed, you can see it immediately. I was saying earlier on that we can aim for the email. This is the .reg extension, that's a blog. We can use a link, and it's also important because I often see sort of more industrial environments where there tends to be a physical control, for instance, devices and so on. It's interesting to see that we are using a flat text file, which is a very simple one. So should we have, for instance, USBs or we have limitations to access email as it should be, if we have a physical access to the machine for a while, we could actually generate a manual script, the file .reg. That's something to remember. So the message here is that the information has already been added, and this is to do with the email that I've sent you earlier on, which pretended to be a human resources survey. This is for users who have not often used the files for registry keys. This could be quite trustworthy. You've answered some questions, and execution is telling you that the information has been added to the registry. So this is where the social engineering comes in. So I close session here, and that's why I was saying earlier on that the .reg file has advantages but also disadvantages. It will not be executed until you have a session closing and reopening or the rebooting of the system. So we have to be patient, but the pro part is that when a team for incident response learns about what has happened, it's going to be harder for them, because on the date in which this infection happens, that execution of the .reg could be at one point in time, and a day after or a few days later is when the rest of the execution take place, and where we will see that first connection. So we see that through the .reg, nothing had happened, just the registry. So I close the session and I open again. It's just as if we reboot the machine. So we'll see at the network connections, see how they're doing. So there's only one physical card as we had initially. And here we see PowerShell coming in, and this is the time it's taken to tell me I am executing item. Because this is a virtual machine, it can be a bit more visible. But just for final users, this is something that they will probably don't detect. If you use a GPO, depending on how you do it, you can have a similar effect. If you use a script or whatever. So it's not very striking really for somebody. For an expert it could be striking, but not for the general user. So here we see that the network adapter for the VPN has just been created, the virtual adapter, and here we see the automatic connection, which is the command, the VUP that you've seen in the initial script, and this is the configuration that we set up. We have set up in the VPN server. We have given it Google DNS. We could choose otherwise depending on what we wanted to do. And here the machine is already beginning to connect to internet through our own VPN network. So this is the first part. We see how in the file we're working with, we see our file, the PVK, where we see the VPN configuration. It's also a text file. The rest of the configuration is automatically written the first time you execute, but this is the domain that I have used for this VPN. And here you see the script.app, which has also been copied from the server. And here's where we have the loop. And this is what we leave in the equipment. As you can see, there are no exe files, nothing that's strange for the operating system. And here we go to the attacker mode to see the server, where in one tab we have the possibility to see what's being executed, and on the other tab we have this file, which is the one we use for command and control. And if we follow the instructions, we write the command.bat file that will go into a loop, and here we can introduce commands that we want to execute in the machine. And I have forgotten to mention that they will be executed with the user at the time and with the permits it has at the time. So this is to see the users for this machine, and with this we can see that something's executed. And here we go to the other tab to look at the answer that it's going to receive. So the script is being waiting for the execution, and as it arrives, it's given us back the results of the commands that we have sent of the users of the machine, the result of a ping. And here we could use that in internet to research the network to see which other machines are there. And here we see the user, in this case the calculator, has opened up, and this is the part of the remote execution. And if we want to be unseen, of course we will not do that, and we will be working on sort of a second level, and the user will only have PowerShell, but this is initially a legitimate process. So this is the first demo. Let's move on to the second one. And we can use these opportunities to do exfiltration, information exfiltration. It's very simple. We go back to what we were doing, but now we have to take into account that everything is being done through the VPN. So if we have a measure at the network trying to detect a pattern, some LP, it will not see this because it's encrypted. Here I've sent a vir about the user, which is logged right now, and we see a file that could be of interest. The name is credit card text. This is an example, but we could deal with PDFs, images, whatever. So we go to the .bat file and we do a copy. This is a copy paste really, but with a command of that file, the credit card file, and we bring it to our server, to this file that we're sharing. And once we've launched the command, again, we go to the tail to listen for the execution of the command, and we see if this file is really copied, and here it is indeed. Sorry. Okay. This is the copied file. Now it's in the server, and we can download it directly with this tool, and here we have the card numbers, and if we send this directly without encryption, well, there could be a configuration checking for the credit card patterns, but the way we've done it, nothing, no alarm will go off. And finally, we're going to look at the man in the middle one. So we go back to the same starting point, to the server, and here we've accessed through the remote desk to the graphic that we have installed in the server. We move on to Wireshark. We check that we have the configuration that I've told you about earlier on, the protocols. We make sure that we have the file with the routes to the shared unit. We define the PPP, which is the interface of the VPN, and we do the exfiltering through TDS. So what we do here is we define the environment variable using this remote execution, and another of the functionalities we can use is define environment variables. And for this, we do not need any authorization from the operator or administrator. The user himself can do it. So it can take a while depending on when it executes, but something else that in my tests I've been surprised by is we're writing commands in Linux and we're executing them in Windows, so that can generate problems to do with characters or switch lines. So that's why I get this message here, but it can be certainly improved to you can do a PowerShell. There are many options, but the command has been correctly executed, the variable has been defined. This is another tale of the keys file where Chrome is going to be dumping. And we move to the equipment we're attacking. We access a page. I've created a very simple page so as not to fuss now with the analysis of a packet in Wireshark. We want to focus on user and password in this case. So we're using a certificate. We could use any other one, but it's been signed. It's another of the tests that I wanted to research, or I've been doing research about when you want to have control over the machine. You can say, I give myself a self-sign certificate. I make it look like my proxy, and I can see everything. That was an idea that I had in mind, but I've seen that in this case there are some obstacles, and it's not so simple. You could do it, but it's not so simple. So that's why I've chosen this option. So we do login. So we'll see what's sent. It's a bit dark, but I think you can see there the values that have been sent in the form. And we go back to the server. What we have open here and the graphic interface are the same server. Just working with the two tools for comfort, but this is the file that I've told you about with all the keys and passwords, and here's the negotiation where Chrome is setting up the encrypted session. So this is giving Wireshark the information needed, and here we look for the packet where the puff is. We can see it all, no problem. And here we have the values of the form in clear text. So this would be the third and last demo. Okay, a final comment is that if we have accessed the equipment and we've done whatever we wanted to do, if we want remotely disconnect and leave everything as it was, what we have to do at the end is to erase the registry password, and because it's in the branch of a current user, we have no problem to delete it. We also delete the configuration of the VPN, the Rush phone, BBK, and then when we disconnect the VPN, everything else, the network will disappear. We delete the persistent script, which is in the same file than the configuration file. Everything's on the same file or in the same folder, and we remove all other evidence of what we've done, and we finally disconnect from the VPA, just like we've done. We right now only have to do rush dial disconnect. This is the way to get out. So this is the whole brings to an end, the whole exercise, and we're going to see, to go over the pros of this approach, really. It's complex to detect in inverted commas, but of course somebody from IT, from the equipment itself, can see the flare of PowerShell as it boots up. We can see there are a number of things that can make them realize that something's going on. But from your standard user without much knowledge about how Windows connections work, I think this is quite discreet. Something that's also very important is that we need no privilege whatsoever for the execution of all this. A normal user is enough. It's a safe channel, as I was saying. We have the VPN, which is something that prima facie should be legal for the user, and we use that to enter internet, and then malwareless because we're using no malicious binary or exploiting any vulnerability. So we're doing nothing outside of the standard behavior of the operating system. And I believe this is what's interesting about this type of exercise. Finally, I wanted to mention that if we have this type of attack, which for a security department can be difficult to detect, let's see how could we do it. There are two sides, I think two very important parts. There's the technology part, all of those tools that we have that will help us fight these attacks, and then the technical part, which is about thinking about what can be going on in our network and see how we can detect. So regarding technology, what I think could be relevant for this type of attack, well, network segregation, a firewall, which in virtualized environments we can resort to microsegmentation and that type of solutions. So we have to keep that concept in mind, segregation, whichever way we choose to do it. A greater endpoint protection with all the new options that are coming up for behavior detection, machine learning, etc. that can help us, and we hope that they will become more and more efficient for this to fight against this type of behavior. And monitoring technologies. At the end of the day, it is important to have a collection of everything that's happening in the company, in the equipment or in the network, through a big data system or through an SIM, so that we have all the information and we can see backlogs and work backwards regarding technical solutions. And what can the SOC team do, or the security analysts in the company? Well, to be a bit more restrictive, particularly in the security operating center, and the person who touches the firewall really should worry, particularly if I have a lot of sort of external staff that needs to connect to the VPN of their own companies, then you should check which VPNs we have, where are they connecting to, and everything else we remove because it shouldn't be there. And that sort of objective analysis phase, I believe, is important. Then to monitor the registry keys, and even there are many companies that limit or tried to limit the catalog of applications that can be installed in their equipment. So when it comes to validating or giving consent for the installing of an application, you can see what the registry keys are. If you have 30 applications and 20 of them generate a registry key, let's configure it so that all of these registry keys different from the normal ones can be detected, because that can give us a lot of visibility about the endpoints where something strange is going on. KPIs and warnings, everything that we recruit, would also be interesting to analyze and study and to make it useful. In this case, particularly, everything goes through a VPN, so everything is encrypted. But if we're seeing in VPN sessions that are very long with a lot of information volume, let's take a look. Or maybe not so much volume, because attackers probably are doing their breaks and sort of compressing information and so as not to be detected, but perhaps a long session can indicate that something strange going on, just like if you're doing a tunnel with UMF or any other technology. So, and finally, and most important, we have been using phishing which we've seen to death, we've been doing for a very long time, and it still works. So let's do exercises with the whole of the company staff and make some awareness raise and telling them about phishing examples that have worked with everyday language, so that they can really understand the need that the security department has when it comes to accepting emails or phone calls that can be suspicious. So just to leave that, give them some food for thought, and then sort of information messages, short messages that help them sort of internalize that it is important, and in that way to raise their awareness. And we could actually perform exercises if we take that email from a survey and send it to our employees from an email address that is not within the company. We see who is fooled and which departments or what people are more vulnerable, and then we can focus on the awareness raising in their particular case. So that's all from me. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks very much, Manel. I'm afraid we have no time for questions. They can buy me a beer and ask whatever they want. Okay, you have his email address there.